Hi everybody! Today I want to share one of my favorite side dishes. I first learned this recipe as an intern with a program called Food Prints in Washington, D.C., where I got to go into elementary schools and cook with the students in their classrooms, which was really fun. This ABC salad, apples, beets, and carrots, was a favorite among the Food Prints students. It's a great one if you want to involve kids in the cooking, but it's also become my go-to contribution to potluck events because adults love it too. So I hope you like it as much as I do. I want to show you a couple of different ways you can go about making this recipe depending on what you've got available in your kitchen. We'll need to shred roughly equal amounts of apples, beets, and carrots for the main part of the salad, and then I'm also going to make a couple of different dressings for it, one with balsamic vinegar and garlic, and then one with sweet onions. So I'm going to get everything peeled, minced, chopped, and grated right off the bat. The onions are going to need some time on the stove to develop their naturally sweet flavor, so I'm going to get those started first. Step one is going to be to cut the onion in half through the root, and that's going to give us a nice flat surface to work with. Next, after peeling that outer papery skin off the outside, you'll want to just cut off the ends that are opposite the root and go ahead and set those aside. If you've got a young helper working with you on this recipe, there's a couple of things that you might find useful that I learned when I was working with kids up in Washington, D.C. One is that there are kid-specific chef knives out there that are plastic and are really good for introducing kids to how to hold the knife, how to do the chopping motions on the board. So you might want to give them one layer of onion at a time so that they can really get that practice in with the chopping motions and with holding the knife. And then finally, if their eyes are sensitive to the onions, you can actually use swimming goggles to protect them so that there's fewer tears and less discomfort while they're working on this project with you. So while they're working on that, you'll want to just get approximately 2 tablespoons of oil heating on the stove. I'm using olive oil. That's usually my go-to, but there are other types that you can use, and I'm just going to eyeball it. So while that's heating, we're going to chop the rest of the onion into really nice, uniform, small pieces. So you're going to make these nice long cuts, not going all the way through to the root. So you want to keep it intact here using the root and then cut it most of the way, but not all the way there. And then you can turn it to the side and then make cuts this way at about the same width that you used for the long ways cuts. And so you can see it makes these really nice uniform size pieces, which is really important because when they go onto the stove, we want them to cook at approximately the same rate. So that's definitely a technique that I use all the time and is super quick and easy. So once that's done and your oil has had a little bit of time to heat up, these onions can just go right into the skillet, and they're going to cook on medium-low heat for about 30 minutes so that we get some caramelization started. And you'll just want to keep an eye on this and stir it occasionally, but while those are cooking, we can work on our ABC ingredients and getting everything with that ready to go. So now that I've got my ABC ingredients roughly chopped, I need to break them down to the right size for our salad. So if you have a blender or a food processor at home, that's a quick way to do this, but you'll just need to be careful not to over-process them because they can get a little bit mushy and it's a little bit less appetizing that way. And it's also important to do each ingredient separately because they have different densities, and so they'll need different processing times if you're using a blender. It's also a good idea to do just little pulses at a time so that you can kind of carefully monitor how things are going. There are food processors that have special attachments that prevent ingredients from hitting the blade more than once. So that's a great tool if you've got that. That's really helpful. I don't have that, so I'm gonna do my carrots in the blender, and then for the beets and the apples, I'm gonna actually prefer using a grater for that, so that I can make sure that I'm not, grinding my ingredients into a pulp, basically. But I'll show you the carrots, the pulsing method with the carrots, so you know what I'm talking about. And then I'll get my beets and apples grated. This is another great job to give to kids, pun intended. And you'll definitely want to supervise them because the grater is deceptively sharp. So if you're worried about their fingers, there are cut-resistant gloves out there that can help protect them. Another thing to be aware of is that the beet juice is a very gorgeous deep red, so just keep an eye on where beet juice hands end up and maybe have some fun with finger painting. To make the first dressing, which is the classic version that we used in food prints, we'll just need to combine a half cup of olive oil, a quarter cup of balsamic vinegar, which I've already got measured out here, with a mashed clove of garlic, and I'll use a microplane to add that to our mixture. And then two other things you might want to add is just a pinch of salt to taste, and if you want to add a little bit of sweetness, maple syrup is really good in this too. So for the garlic, you're going to want to mash it all the way and really grind it into a pulp so that it gets distributed throughout the dressing. So a microplane is ideal for this because you can kind of just set it over the jar that you're using, or the smallest side of a grater works as well. So you just add this right in, add your pinch of salt and maple syrup if you'd like to, and then you can just store it in the fridge in a jar just like this. And we're finally back to our onions. This is the second dressing, which is sort of my own spin on the recipe. The onions are done cooking. I've let them cool all the way down. They're nice and soft and translucent, and so some of the sugars have come out a little bit. And I do recommend using a blender for this one to make sure that the consistency is nice and smooth. So I'm just going to dump in the onions, and I'm going to add this mixture. I've got olive oil, half a cup of olive oil, and a quarter cup of apple cider vinegar this time. And I'm just going to add that all to the blender with just a little pinch of salt. Then I'm going to blend that until it's smooth, store it in a mason jar, and bring it back out when I'm ready to serve. So there you go, that's all there is to it. What really amazes me about this recipe is how well the flavors of the different ingredients seem to meld together. I'm usually not a big fan of raw beets by themselves, but when they're added into this mix, I find they add a really nice earthiness and this really gorgeous color that hopefully you can see kind of defines this salad. Something fun you might try during a mindful eating practice is to experience each of the main ingredients separately, using all of your senses to fully explore it, and then try them together in the salad and identify all the different flavors that you added, the smells, the textures, and the colors. And if you notice something about it that you don't like, that's completely okay. And actually knowing that might help you find ways to modify the recipe next time so that it's more satisfying to you and to what your body is wanting at the moment. So I hope you enjoyed the process, and I'll see you next time.